Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar where I'll be talking about reviews, which is an absolute essential part of anything that you're doing if you're working in the education space. Whether you're, like a lot of strategies I guess, it applies across the board, whether you're teaching year 3s or teaching year 12s, regardless of the topic, in remedial classes or right up the top with students who are accelerated and high flyers and things like that. Now, a review is basically a certain period or activity in a lesson that covers the material that you have been trying to learn. So I'm dumbing it down as much as possible. Really, it's just about looking, I guess, historically at what you've done so far and whether you've moved in the right direction. So let me try and explain that in an easier way. Let's say you've got your basic lesson plan there, drawn perfectly straight as I normally do. And at the end of the lesson, you're going to have some type of review that looks at all the different parts here. So let's say there were 5 aspects of that lesson. You're going to be looking at those 5 lessons and doing something of a summary and looking at whether you or the students were progressing well. So whether they progressed, whether they hit their goals, how they went, whether there are any gaps in their abilities or skills, so gaps, weaknesses or strengths and so on and so forth. But it's also a really good time where you can help students with things like their metacognitive skills. So you're teaching them how to think about thinking. I won't go into metacognitive skills here because I talk about that in a different webinar, and I talk about that through all my different webinars actually, because it's really important. You can also talk about and revise or review your coping strategies or coping skills if you're teaching any of those, and so forth. So reviews are a very important aspect of the teaching and learning process. It's also a time to summarise what's going on. And really, if we were to define a review in a really technical term, it would be something along the lines of a consideration of student progress against the stated goals of that activity or that learning sequence. So that would be, I guess, a more technical term. So again, if at the start of the lesson you have, say, 2 goals, learning how to change a tyre on a bike or something like that, then the review at the end assesses whether we met those goals, also looks at what was the various different aspects or part of that activity, whether again we met those goals, whether there are any gaps in our understanding, and it kind of makes a decision. You're making there is a decision there to be made, right? Yeah. So there is a decision to be made there about whether we met those goals and to what standard. So there's a criteria that is around that. Even if it's a simple goal, you will have an idea of what that looks like in your head. So you've got either a picture, so that's in a way criteria. And so if you've got one goal, you will have 2 or 3 criteria for that goal or sub-goals, whatever you want to call it. And here we're making a decision about whether we met those goals. So that's an important aspect of it. Sometimes that decision will be done by the student, so some type of self-assessment. There'll be feedback from the teacher as well, and so on and so forth. So reviews also happen at the start of the lesson. So at the top of the lesson here, I like to do reviews here so that you're linking to previous knowledge, to previous lessons, and you're saying, here's what we learned here, and here's what we're going to learn here, and here is how they link together, and here is how they build as an overall picture. And you're also reviewing whether students have understood everything that's gone on so far. Because as you will know, you need that foundational knowledge or that foundational information here before you can start again. So you're reviewing whether they met the goals of previous activities. Now, that previous learning activities and learning goals and so forth. You can also do reviews throughout your lesson, so little short, sharp reviews. These only need to be 3 minutes, by the way. They're 2 minutes, 30, maybe not 30 seconds, but they're pretty short. Same with the one at the start, usually only say 3-4 minutes, something like that. Doesn't have to be very long. It's also kind of integrated with your the way in which you go about doing your introduction, and maybe you're modelling at the start, because if you're doing a worked example for something, then you're going to have to use that as a basis to be able to then start here and explain the things you're doing today, if there is a link between those different aspects. If they're completely different, then maybe not the case, and it doesn't hurt to do a review in that case anyway. And as they hit each step in that learning journey, I guess you could call it, it's important to do reviews. Now, you can also do review on a larger scale. So if you've got, let's say this is your calendar, and each one of those boxes represents, that's day 1, that's day 2, that's day 3, or lesson 4, lesson 5, whatever. You may choose to do reviews at specific times. So you might do a review here and a review here, so that you know, or maybe you'll do another review there. So you've got these different times where you're doing reviews, and they relate to different aspects of the lesson. So that review there covers all of that stuff there. This review here mainly will cover all of that stuff there, but it will also cover some of that stuff. And then the final review will actually cover everything. So you're scheduling those reviews in, not just at the micro level, but also at the larger level over there. Now, the other thing I will say is that I do have a video on spaced learning, what is also known as disturbed learning. And that's about, in that I do talk about reviews as well, because it's important to understand that physically in the brain, the more times you review something and that you're forced to recall it, the more that that is going to strengthen those neurons and synapses and things in the brain. And the better an understanding a better understanding that the student is going to have, and they're going to be able to do things like automatically recall that information. They're going to be able to use it in their working memory, which is sort of a short-term memory. You need to be able to do a task without it taking up too much cognitive space or too much cognitive load, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of important aspects to reviews. One of them is to consolidate that information, or those concepts, or those understanding with a student over a period of time. Now, I always say, this is the example that I always use, quite often in a classroom environment. Let's say we have three separate units of work. So this one goes for 3 weeks, or let's say all of them go for 3 weeks, right? And we leave a week at the end where there's some type of review there. So we've factored in some type of review. But this bit here, number 3, what happens when we get to here? We've completely forgotten it, even if there might be an exam or something there. But even if there's not, it's always worth reviewing the topics or information that we learnt there, if it's not already embedded here anyway, at different points. So you might do a review towards the end, but then you might also do a review, say you do a review towards the end of all of them, but you may also do a review of that first one, but to a smaller extent here. Or maybe you'll just do it in the middle as just a bit of a throwback to this part here. And spaced learning tells us that the more often we do reviews, and the more that we have that, the more opportunities we have to think about and practice things that we've learned in the past over a period of time, the more we have to take it from long-term memory to short-term memory, and then to use it, and then to put that information back into long-term memory, the stronger our skills and knowledge are going to be as far as that particular topic is concerned. So doing a little 10-minute review there, even just a game or something of this bit here, is going to help students fill gaps and improve their abilities in that regard, and also significantly improve their recall of all that stuff there. Because if you just finish there and that's it, when you come here, they're not going to remember anything. And if we were to repeat this again, by the time, that doesn't mean you're going to have to review that forever, but just doing that review an extra couple of times is going to have a significant impact long term. So I'm talking, say, 3 years later, 4 years later type of thing, compared to if you just did a 3-week thing here, and that was it. So just a quick little video there about reviews, because while it's simple, it's an absolute essential part of everything that you do, whether you're working with kids in a remedial program, just doing very basic maths or number sense or phonics or whatever it is. or you're working with adults, or you're working with teenagers, doesn't matter what you're doing, high-flying students, students that are really struggling with their core skills, reviews and regular reviews is an essential part of the teaching and learning process.